Welcome to this week's midweek space news. I'll put the chapter markers for each news story in the timeline. So if you're not interested in a particular story, you can just skip ahead to the next one. Okay, so let's get on with the news. I was going to cover some of the smaller startups, which is what I normally do, but there's a big story brewing at the moment, and that is between NASA and SpaceX, Blue Origin, and Sean Duffy, the acting NASA administrator. So first of all, I'm going to read some of the articles together so we all understand the context, and then I'll have some opinions. Let's start with the news. So this is from Reuters. It says NASA opens SpaceX's moon lander contract to rivals over Starship delays. So I've just highlighted some areas. It's saying opening the marquee US moon landing contract to other bidders. The contract was between Elon Musk's SpaceX Starship vehicle and Jeff Bezos's Blue Origin lunar landers. Those two landers won the contract for the human landing system. Now Sean Duffy wants to open that up to other contenders. SpaceX has experienced mounting delays with its Starship lunar lander. Jeff Bezos's Blue Origin to snatch a high-profile mission to land the first astronauts on the moon. Well, the thing is, Blue Origin already has a contract under NASA for the human landing system. It was expected that Artemis 3, the very first mission back to the moon, the crewed mission back to the moon, would be by SpaceX's Starship. That's now under question. We have this quote from Sean Duffy: "I'm in the process of opening that contract up. I think we'll see companies like Blue, that's Blue Origin, get involved, and maybe others." He also says pressure within NASA to speed up its Artemis lunar program and push SpaceX to make greater progress on its Starship lunar lander. So this is a major shift in NASA's lunar strategy, just 2 years before the scheduled landing date. So the landing date keeps getting pushed back. It's now probably going to be 2028 at the earliest, but it keeps getting pushed back. Lockheed Martin has indicated it would convene an industry team to heed NASA's call. Starship won a contract worth $4.4 billion. They do remarkable things, but they're behind schedule, Duffy said of SpaceX's lunar lander work. This is Elon Musk. "SpaceX is moving like lightning compared to the rest of the space industry," he said. "Moreover, Starship will end up doing the whole moon mission. Mark my words." So what he's saying here is that the crew will launch on a Starship, and the Starship will go directly, once it's been refilled, it will go to the moon, it will land on the moon, they will do the mission, they'll take back off and come back, just using Starship and no other vehicle. Duffy's reference to Blue Origin on Monday suggests Bezos' space company could contend for Artemis 3. They were going to do, I think, Artemis 5 or something. Artemis 4 is the gateway, and there's Artemis 5 later on, but maybe now Blue Origin could do Artemis 3. NASA has grown uneasy with a lack of progress on lunar lander-specific development milestones. The agency has told SpaceX and Blue Origin to present accelerated moon landing plans by the 29th of October, which is a week from now. NASA is also going to request plans from the entire commercial space industry for how NASA can increase the cadence of our mission to the moon. So that's from Reuters. Let's look at the contract between NASA and Blue Origin. NASA selects Blue Origin as second Artemis lunar lander provider, and this was in May 2023. So you can see here the crew demo on the Artemis 5 mission in 2029. So Blue Origin is scheduled to do the Artemis 5 mission, a firm fixed price contract for $3.4 billion. Also here it says meet the agency's requirements for sustainable exploration, capabilities for increased crew size, longer mission duration, and delivery of more mass to the moon. And again, NASA is saying about investing in commercial capabilities and fostering a lunar economy. Bring up this graphic here. You can see these are the two human landing systems that NASA has paid fixed contracts for. We have the SpaceX vehicle here, and then we have the Blue Origin Mark II. Blue Origin is working on two lunar landers, a Mark I and a Mark II. And I bring up this graphic here. You can see this is for scale. This is the Apollo lunar module from the 1970s. The Mark I is a purely cargo lander, and that will be important for later. So this is the cargo lander that can land 3 metric tons onto the surface of the moon and is not reusable. but it doesn't require any refilling in low Earth orbit. And then you have the crewed lander, which is the Mark II, which you can see is much bigger, and it is reusable. You can reuse this many times if you refill it with liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. It can carry, I think, 4 crew down to the surface, but it needs to be refilled in low Earth orbit using their cislunar transporter. And if we have a look at this graphic here, you can see the difference. The Mark I, 3 metric tons, not refuelable and doesn't support humans, and the Mark II, 20 metric tons in reusable mode. Or if it's just landing and not taking off again, you can put 30 tons on there. And it can be refueled. So now let's look at another article. Okay, so this article is by Eric Berger at Ars Technica, and he's talking about how the US fell behind China. But the reason I want to look at this is the alternative architectures that is being talked about, or he's heard some people in the industry are talking about. So let's have a look. Blah, blah, blah. We're not interested in this. We're interested in the alternatives. What are the alternatives? So stubby Starship, that's not going to happen. More funding, I don't really think anyone thinks the budget's going to increase. So here is some real alternatives, I think. Build a lunar module. Some traditional contractors have been telling NASA and the Trump officials this is the best option. America has built a lunar module already. They did it in the 70s. Why not just dust off the design and build it again? I don't think this is really that practical, to be honest, because there's no one who knows how it was built. I could build it again. You can't get the parts. So I don't think that's a real practical option. But this is important stuff. Eric Berger's been talking to his sources, and he suggests the answer is Blue Origin's Mark I lander, which, as we have already described, is not rated for humans. It's just a cargo lander. But if we scroll down here, Blue Origin has begun preliminary work on a modified version of the Mark I lander, part of an architecture to land humans on the moon this decade, multiple Mark I landers to carry crew down to the lunar surface and then ascend back up to a lunar orbit to rendezvous with the Orion spacecraft. Blue Origin engineers are confident the approach could work. And Jeff Bezos, the CEO, the owner, is intrigued by the idea. So if we go back here, proposed architecture is not use the Mark II, which is the crew version, which NASA has already contracted Blue Origin to use, but instead look at the Mark I and land multiple Mark Is on the surface of the moon. Each one is 3 tons, so you can put a crew module on top of the Mark I. You could then land another Mark I with an ascent module. So the crew get out, they do the flags and footprint mission, and then they get back into the other lander with the ascent module, take off, and then rendezvous with Orion in lunar orbit, and then back to Earth. So that is the alternative proposal. I think it's a very bad proposal because, first of all, the lander is not designed for crew. Blue Origin has no experience verifying and validating orbital vehicles for crew rating. SpaceX is the only private commercial company to crew rate a vehicle in the last 40 years. Boeing Starliner is not rated yet, so it's only SpaceX in the last 40 years. The idea is that in 1 or 2 years, Blue Origin, which hasn't launched any useful payload to orbit, as Elon Musk has said, the idea that they're going to have a crew-rated lunar lander that can land on the moon in just a few years is just insane. I don't think there's any possibility of that happening at all. So if we have a look at this article, we can see that tensions are mounting. Tensions flare between Musk and NASA over moon mission. Elon Musk has lashed out at NASA's acting administrator. He says that Sean Dummy is trying to kill NASA. His name is actually Sean Duffy. And NASA was seeking new bids to support its mission to return humans to the moon. NASA is now planning the Artemis 3 mission for mid-2027. I don't think anyone thinks that mid-2027 is going to happen. It looks like 2028 at the earliest, and there are very good reasons why it's going to be that late or even later. And one of them is like the spacesuit is not ready. There's only one company working on the Artemis spacesuit. Originally it was 2, and Collins Aerospace dropped out, so there's only There's only Axiom Space working on it at the moment. They have issues with their management and so on, with their finances, and they are the only company working on the spacesuit. So there's a lot of work still needed to make this happen. It's very complicated. It's still a work in progress. So no one's going back to the moon until the Axiom spacesuit has been verified, ready for use. This is where the situation is with NASA. Some other information we have, again, this is from Eric Berger. He's saying the Wall Street Journal report confirms what I've heard about Duffy pushing for NASA to fold into the Department of Transportation. He's meeting with senators. For him, a win-win. He gets to take credit for NASA's success, but doesn't have to run the agency. Obviously, folding NASA into the Department of Transport would be I think it would be a terrible idea, and the end of NASA's independence, which to me would be not good at all. We also have this ex-post from Jack Core, who's saying Lockheed enters the lander chat. Throughout this year, Lockheed Martin has been performing significant technical and programmatic analysis for human lunar landers that would provide options to NASA for a safe solution to return humans to the moon as quickly as possible. We have been working with a cross-industry team of companies, and together we are looking forward to addressing Secretary Duffy's request to meet our country's lunar objectives. And then that's Bob Bernanke, VP of Exploration and Technology Strategy at Lockheed. And that's in an email statement to Payload. And we also have this image from Sean Duffy, and it's the two astronauts with the American flag. Which is interesting because obviously the Artemis Accords, 56 nations at the moment. Many other countries other than the US are working on this. The Orion service module is built by Europe. Many sections of the Gateway is built by Europe. The multipurpose habitat, that will be habitation module for the Artemis base camp, is being built by the Italian Space Agency and probably landed by the Argonaut lunar lander, which is a European lander. The pressurized lunar cruiser is being provided by JAXA, the Japanese Space Agency, probably on a H3 Japanese rocket. So there are many other companies involved in Artemis. So that graphic, I don't know how well it goes down with the other Artemis partners. And especially when you look at the Chinese renders recently, they just show their base camp. There's no flags. It's just International Lunar Research Station, which is the Chinese-led base, moon base. And I think it contrasts with this very jingoistic render here. That's just my opinion. And one more thing I want to say before we get onto the other news is, go back to this. This is some information on the cost of NASA's SLS launch vehicle, the Orion crew vehicle, and the Gateway station, how much it's cost. And we compare it with SpaceX. So basically the traditional approach with very large aerospace companies, cost plus kind of approach, to the commercial fixed price contracts. So we can see here the NASA Gateway, SLS and Orion has cost a total of $43.5 billion so far. So that half of that is SLS. The launch vehicle, then you've got Orion, is $18 billion, and the Gateway $2 billion, compared to about $6 to $7 billion for the SpaceX Starship. And that's projected maybe to go up to $10 billion in total. Then we have the marginal cost per launch, which is estimated somewhere between $2 to $4 billion. So every time the SLS vehicle launches, it's going to cost between $2 to $4 billion. And that's not including, for instance, the ground segment stuff or whatever, compared to $90 million for a Starship at the moment. But the target is to get below $10 million for the fully reusable Starship. So you're comparing $2 to $4 billion as opposed to 10 million. So it's 100 times cheaper to use the fully reusable Starship than the SLS system. And finally, we have the cost efficiency, which you can see is somewhere between $20,000 to $40,000 per kilo of payload on the SLS system, compared to $40 to $600 per kilo for Starship at the moment, and hopefully over time dropping to under $10 per kilo. Basically, that's just making the point that commercial, private sector launch systems are way cheaper. They're more technologically advanced. They're reusable, 100% reusable, and the cost is much less. So for space startups, they really need low cost to create commercially viable businesses. NASA has wanted a sustainable return to the moon for long-term human presence on the moon. So if you look at the website, Growing the Lunar Economy, this is the NASA website, they say they want a robust lunar marketplace, stimulate the commercial space industry, and bring down costs and grow the business opportunities that can foster a lunar economy. So commercial lunar payload surfaces, spacesuits commercially competed, lunar terrain vehicles, again, commercial, private contracts. So this is NASA's approach. Sean Duffy appears to want to scrap that commercial approach and just go to flags and footprints 2.0, whatever gets us to the moon before China. The whole strategy of making a sustainable return seems to be just thrown into the bin, and we'll just do whatever will get us there in a few years, doesn't matter how much it costs. Companies like Lockheed Martin, which would be very, very expensive. So this seems like a terrible idea and not the way we should be doing things, but I guess we'll see what happens. That's all I have to say on it so far, and we'll see what happens in the following weeks. Okay, on to other news. So we have here a tweet from S.E. Robinson Jr., and he says that today Muon Space announced an agreement with SpaceX to integrate Starlink mini laser terminals into its Halo satellite platform. This will give them 25 gigabits per second link speeds over 4,000 kilometers for persistent optical connectivity to Starlink's global network. So here's an image of the Muon satellite. And it will be able to beam data to the Starlink network, having to wait until it's over a ground station. It can now integrate within the Starlink network. Wherever the satellite is, it can send data via the internet down to a user terminal. And we have some information from Relativity Space. We have an update. Fall has arrived, and with it more Terran R program progress across design, build, test, and launch. Builds the first flight thrust structure past acceptance testing, proving it can withstand 3.7 million pounds of tension. It is now undergoing integration, including the installation of secondary structures. And acceptance testing of the first flight Iron Ore engine began at NASA Stennis, while second stage vacuum engine development continued with full duration burns, including a 475-second mission duty cycle hot fire. Launch at Cape Canaveral, the horizontal integration facility is fully framed, and lightning protection tower foundations are taking place. And we actually have a video. I put myself in the corner. So this is the latest update from September 2025. So Relativity Space has launched their Terran 1 vehicle, and then they immediately pivoted to the Terran R, which is a medium launch vehicle. It's reusable, and they've been working on it the last couple of years, and hopefully they'll be launching next year. So this is something potentially that Firefly Aerospace could do or should do. They have a small vehicle, the Alpha vehicle. It's been failing recently. It's only been successful 2 flights out of 6. They were working on a medium launch vehicle, but they still continue to launch a small vehicle. And maybe they should be doing what Relativity Space is doing, which is just work on the medium-sized vehicle, get more lucrative payloads. You can do more missions. There's very little money to be made with small satellites. And what money there is to be made is made by SpaceX with the transporter missions and with the Rocket Lab Electron vehicle. So just forget about small launches and pivot to medium launch vehicles. Hopefully we'll see Relativity Space launch next year. They've got, I think it's Slick 14 at Cape Canaveral. And as you can see, they're working on the flight structures. They're working on the engines. I think there's some engine testing they're doing. So this is the development engines for the second stage. And I think they do a 475-second mission duty cycle. So here's that's Stennis, I think. So that's the testing. But they're also working on this is the launch pad they're working on. They've been working on it for about a year. It's coming out into place now. They're working on the lightning protection towers. They're doing the propellant tanks now, setting them up. So they'll be in a good position for their maiden flight in 2026 with their Terran R vehicle. That is Relativity Space. Moving on to InnoSpace, which is a South Korean space startup. We have this article here. InnoSpace obtains launch authorization for first commercial launch mission called Spaceward. First private company to obtain a commercial launch authorization from the Korean Aerospace Administration, or CASA. InnoSpace has completed all approval procedures for the maiden flight of Hanbit Nano. Hanbit Nano scheduled to launch between the 28th of October and the 28th of November. That's Brazil time. It's the first commercial launch by a private company from Brazil's space launch site. And the launch will take place from Alcantara Space Center, operated by the Brazilian Air Force from InnoSpace's proprietary launch platform. The company's first commercial launch, carrying customer satellites and payloads into low Earth orbit at an altitude of 300 kilometers, and a total of 8 registered payloads. And in other news about InnoSpace, they've signed an agreement with a German satellite firm, MBS. So this is for $5.8 million, and it's a contract with a media broadcasting satellite company, a German satellite communications company, to provide launch services. They're contracted to carry out 2 launch missions using the company's Hanbit launch vehicle between 2026 and 2029. Everything's going great for InnoSpace. It will be the very first South Korean space startup to launch a vehicle into orbit. So wish them the best of luck. On to our next story, and Eric Berger has reported after 6 months, the CEO of Axiom Space has left the role as CEO. The leadership of the space company continues to be turbulent, and he was only in his position for 6 months, which is not really a long time. Previously, they had Mike Suffredini from NASA. The finances for Axiom Space are not good, but they are a critical supplier for the NASA Artemis program, particularly the Artemis spacesuit. Astronauts cannot go to the moon until this spacesuit is ready for use, which is not by any means at the moment. The problem with Axiom Space is the finances are not great. They're also working on, if I just remove this, they're also working on the Axiom Station, which is a commercial LEO destination. It's received some money from NASA via Space Act agreements. It's been delayed. It's now looking like it's going to be 2027, 2028. And there's been changes to the modules because of NASA requirements. We'll see what happens, but commercially, from a financial point of view, it's not looking too good for Axiom Space, and the changes to CEO don't really help. So keep an eye on Axiom Space going forward. The other story I want to talk about is Starcloud and NVIDIA, and we have an article here. This is from NVIDIA, their blog site. They say how Starcloud is bringing data centers to outer space. Space-based data centers will offer 10 times lower energy costs. The startup's ultimate goal is to bring state-of-the-art data centers to outer space. Render from their video, 5 gigawatts of power, and these are just all containers that include the NVIDIA H100 GPU and CPU. Quite power hungry, so you need an enormous number of solar panels to power those AI systems. In a quote, they say, "In space, you get almost unlimited, low-cost, renewable energy," said Philip Johnson, co-founder and CEO of the startup. And this is the main reason to put your data center in space. You get free energy from the sun, which is great, but it's not all good news. So if we look at the advantages are unlimited free energy from the sun, no environmental or zoning laws or permits, no resistance from locals, no or less sabotage risk, and no environmental exposure, hurricanes, tornadoes. On the case of like the NIMBYism, or people don't want data centers near them, there's a very good reason for that, and that is electricity use is off the scale, off the charts. It's increasing exponentially. Every tech company wants their own AI model, and for that you need to build a data center to train it, and each new version of the model requires exponentially more power. The next generation large language models will require something like 5 gigawatts to train. And here's what happens to electricity prices. So this is US electricity price, and it just shoots up. So if you've got a data center near you, expect to pay more in electricity and probably water usage as well. So it's not great for locals. This is why there's a push to put data centers in space. But unfortunately, there's quite a few challenges or issues. The challenges are power generation. You need millions of solar panels, thermal management to keep the data center cool, you need a lot of radiators, millions of square meters of radiators. You've got orbital debris risk, you've got radiation causing data corruption, and basically it's just commercially unviable. With today's launchers, it's just not cost effective to put the equipment you need to put into space. So maybe in 5, 10 years, 10 to 20 years, it will be more possible. So that is everything I want to say this week. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this space video, then consider buying me coffee to help fund more episodes like this. I'll put the link in the description. Yeah, so I do these news roundups every week, midweek now. Please like and subscribe if you like these kinds of videos. If you want to see my upcoming videos, I normally do 4 videos a week, 2 dedicated videos, a roundup, and then a live stream on Saturday or Sunday. Then I bring up people's comments and chat messages. But thank you for watching, and I will see you next week.